Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. We thank you for joining us today, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, be sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and catch the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed. You can find us at Sabres Scoop, THW, and everything else at The Hockey Writer. And make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss out on the latest and weirdest hockey news every day. Brandon, you got to introduce our guest for today's show.
I certainly do, and I'm excited about this one because we got a lot to talk about. So today we are joined by Sean Raggio, one of our Seattle Kraken contributors for the Hockey Writers. You can find him on Twitter at Raggio. That's Raggio 9124. We'll make sure to drop that in the episode post as well, so you don't got to memorize that one. Anyway, Sean, it's been quite a busy week for you, I'm sure. How are you feeling after the expansion draft?
I'm feeling like it's really nice to have a team to cover at this point. I think it was really exciting. Not at all what most people expected. I know I was wrong on a lot of things with that, which we'll get into. But I think it was done really well, and I'm excited to get started with the offseason now.
Totally. Awesome. And I got logged out of the topic sheet here, so I'm logging back in. But and here we are. Of course, that always happens when the episode starts. Anyway, The Sabres. All right, so you're going to chime in on this, I'm sure. The Sabres lost 24-year-old defender Will Borgen in the expansion draft. This was actually expected. A lot of people had him going in the expansion draft, the mock drafts. I actually, under the assumption that Ristolainen would be gone, which, of course, why would I assume he wouldn't still be a part of the Sabres? But I thought Borgen would be protected. He wasn't. Taken by the Kraken. There were some rumors leading up even on Instagram. There was a story of him saying he was Seattle bound. That appeared to be fake. Jordan even reported on that. It was a confusing situation. But luckily, Pierre LeBrun, not Frank Saravelli, was the one who reported Borgen to Seattle. What do you think? Let's go to Jordan first, and we'll get a Kraken perspective on this. What do you make of losing Borgen? How does he fit in Seattle, Jordan?
Well, the thing about Borgen is he's only played 12 NHL games, right? Up to this point, he's a 23-year-old defender. He showed promise at the American Hockey League level with Rochester, and I mean, he looked like an NHL defender when he did play with the Sabres at various times, but he's going to be a project, right? Like looking at the Seattle D-Corps, he's not going to be playing games right away. He's going to be playing if there's an injury to one or two of their guys, most likely. So he's a depth guy who has the potential, I think, to be a solid third pairing defenseman in the NHL. I can see why the team protected Ristolainen, because as we're going to get into later in the show, he apparently has positive trade value and teams are actively looking to trade for him. So I would protect him, get some assets there. And although Borgen is kind of you would like to see him be on the team just because the team is rebuilding. It's okay to lose him, in my opinion. And regarding all those rumors, I did report on that. I did see that screenshot. I can't believe some Sabres fan out there actually faked that screenshot and took the time to do that. You would expect that with like Vladimir Tarasenko or Carey Price, but of course, some chaotic Sabres fan made a fake screenshot of Will Borgen, who hasn't used Instagram, by the way, since June 2020.
There we go. So they're good. Yeah, there's no way it was him, but hey, ended up being true. So, I mean, it was pretty easy to guess, but anyway, losing Borgen or actually gaining Borgen in your situation. Sean, do you know anything about him? Have you heard his name before yesterday night? What do you think?
Well, unlike him, I have been active on Instagram. I just posted today. Check it out. But I was definitely surprised. I knew of the name just because just generally watching hockey, but I really don't know much about his game. I thought they would take a defenseman from Buffalo, but I wasn't going with Borgen. I was honestly looking at Colin Miller. I thought he had a decent cap hit, and he played. It's kind of hard to get a good read on guys coming from Buffalo, considering the last season, but he played well for Vegas. I think that when you're going to draft defensively heavy, which is what they did, it's not that bad to have decent potentially NHL ready defensemen in your AHL team playing in the AHL, just furthering that game. They can get top minutes that they might not be getting in the NHL. And I think that a year or two down the line, that could help them a lot, especially if some of these guys move on. We got Hayden Fleury's RFA, Curtis McDermott, UFA, Mark Giordano, who I'm sure we'll get to later, is also a UFA. So there could be some roster spots coming up down the line. Even to 3 off seasons from now, Carson Soucy is going to be UFA.
Yeah, definitely. In regards to the Sabres, I think they honestly came out better than most teams when it came to the expansion draft. They didn't lose that great of a player, but they're also not that great of a team. So it's kind of expected that they probably were okay. Like the Sabres were like the team where it's like, okay, like Seattle didn't even really need to pick anybody if they didn't have to. But moving on here, we're going to talk a little bit about the NHL draft because guess what? Buffalo's drafting first overall. Seattle's drafting second. So that leads to a lot of interesting possibilities. Obviously, who Buffalo takes is heavily going to persuade Seattle to take whatever player they have as their BPA. So let's talk a little bit about who the Sabres should be picking first overall. We've been hammering away at this point what feels like forever now. I'm a little bit on the William Eklund hype train, but it looks like, according to all sources available, including Bob McKenzie, who recently just surveyed 10 NHL scouts, they all believe that Owen Power will be the first overall pick. And reading everything about him, even Scott Wheeler, I believe I just saw wrote a little piece about him on The Athletic. He's going to be a number one defender, it looks like, for the next 15 years. I know the Sabres already have Rasmus Dahlin, but you can never really have enough of these guys. I'm getting the sense, at least, I don't know if you guys have differing opinions, that Owen Power will be the first overall pick. I'm curious to see if William Eklund is, the guy that should be picked there. But for now, it looks like it's going to be Power. What do you have to say about Brandon? And then we'll ask Sean.
Yeah, I've sort of stuck with the same story, and I think I got to trust Kevin Adams, right? He kept Eichel and Reinhart around until now, but I still go with, if he knows in the back of his mind that Eichel and Reinhart are not going to be a part of this team next season, he has got to draft a center, and it's got to be Matthew Beniers. But if he thinks Eichel and Reinhart are going to be part of this team, go with Owen Power so you can shore up that back end, have a nice pairing of Dahlin and Power for the next 15 years, like you said. I don't know, or they can be, they both shoot left, so we'll see how that works. But I mean, I would draft a center. I would draft Beniers because I just feel like Eichel and Reinhart are not going to be here. But I don't know. Yeah, from a Kraken perspective, Sean, who do you think should go first overall? And at second overall, who are you hoping falls to you?
Well, I'm definitely, from a Kraken perspective, hoping that Owen Power goes first overall, because Kraken are not that strong down the middle from this draft. I mean, I love Yanni Gourde. I love what he brings. I love the physicality, the grit. I love how he can put up 50 points. But excuse me if I got that number wrong. But I don't see him as that number one center. He's a great middle six center. But I think that if Owen Power goes first overall, then Matt Beniers or even Eklund, who our Mark Scheig is really high on him, Eklund, I think that they need to take that center. I think part of the reason that they kind of went weak in the center is almost that gamble. They're taking a bet here that Buffalo's going to take Power and they're going to get Beniers at second overall. I think he could go first. If I was Ron Francis, I'd hope he goes second. That's my pick right there.
Definitely. No, and when it comes to the rest of the draft, at least the first round, it's going to be very hard to predict because literally looking at various mock drafts all over the place, I don't understand what's going to happen here because a guy like Mason McTavish could go anywhere from 3rd to 10th overall. I've seen Kent Johnson, another name where it's like, where's he going to go? I'm really curious to get your guys' opinion on goaltender Jesper Waldstad, who, I mean, most people assumed would be going to the Detroit Red Wings. Well, guess what? They made a huge trade today that will acquire. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but they've acquired probably their number one goaltender now for the next decade. I don't necessarily think they're going to be picking Wallstedt. Where do you think he's going? Because it kind of seems at this point it's likely going to be the San Jose Sharks. That would be my bet. What do you think there, Sean?
I think that if the Devils don't take him, and that's the only reason I'm saying that is because I'm not entirely sure. I'm blanking on the name. Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yes.
Right.
Blackwood. I'm not entirely sure at this moment in time he's a true number one goaltender. I think a 1A, 1B, granted, I don't know if Wallstead would just step right in, but I think it's probably going to be Sam because they both need goaltenders.
I'll be shocked if he steps right in. He's definitely going to need at least like 3 years.
Aside from the fact that just because generally goalies take a little bit longer to get in, I'm very much for don't put your top picks in. Don't let them walk right in. I think I wouldn't have minded, Alexis Lafreniere staying in juniors to start last year. Honestly, even Capo Caco, maybe playing the AHL, get North American hockey under your belt before you step right in and are expected to put up 20 goals. I think that they need that time, and I think that makes a lot of sense for New Jersey to take Luke Hughes, but at the same time, I think that they definitely need another goalie. And if they do pass on him, I think it's going to be San Jose. They need help. They need help aside from just in net, but that was 7th overall. That's what you got to do.
What do you think there, Brandon? Being the San Jose Sharks fan that you are, you even cover them now. Do you think Wallstedt falls to them? Do you think he goes somewhere else? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I would have hoped that Wallstedt would fall to them. Like you said, I thought it was going to be Detroit all along, but evidently that's not looking like what it's going to be like. Funny enough, after last night's expansion draft, Sharks general manager Doug Wilson actually held a conference and said that they are not drafting a goalie in this draft. Now, I don't know if there's much truth to that. I don't know if he's bluffing a little bit, trying to see if he can get Wallstedt to fall to him. But I think this guy believes in Adin Hill, and I think he also still has not bought out Martin Jones, which is an interesting choice in my opinion. But I don't know, man. I could see Wallstedt going anywhere from 7 to 10. Any of those teams there, Sharks until whoever has the 10th pick. I believe it's Chicago. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting, but I'm gonna say top 10 is where Wallstedt goes.
I think if there's smoke, there's fire, and he must have heard something that'll make him. If he's bluffing, I think he had to have heard something that someone earlier was either seriously considering or just straight up going to take him. And that might be where he came from with that.
Yeah. But we'll find out one way or another. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And, the draft isn't the only big story that's coming up, right? Because it's like it happened so fast. But expansion, entry draft, free agency right after. So there's going to be a lot. These next few days, I'm sure, are going to be action packed. There's a lot of signings already going on. Darren Dreger actually tweeted out today, talking about trade news again. The Edmonton Oilers have kicked the tires on Rasmus Ristolainen, our good old longtime Buffalo Sabres defenseman. They lost Adam Larson to Seattle, which I thought was actually, I think that the contract that Seattle gave him was actually pretty decent. I will say that. The Oleksiak one, I'm a little shaky on, but I think he's a good player too. But yeah, Larson to Seattle. Edmonton acquired Duncan Keith, and they look poised to re-sign Tyson Barrie. His agent today said they're in contract talks. As far as Ristolainen goes, big, hard-hitting, right-shooting defenseman. Is there a fit in Edmonton? Let's start with you, Sean.
I think there could be. I don't think he'll be relied on to play as heavy of workload as he was in Buffalo. I feel like, yes, Dahlin's kind of becoming the guy, but he was always kind of looked at to be that steady presence, and I feel like he'll be able to just play a bit more in Edmonton. I think it'd be a bit different than Adam Larson in Edmonton. I was listening to 31 Thoughts today, Elliot Friedman podcast, and he was kind of saying that because of the one-for-one trade Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, it put this expectation, and again, I'm paraphrasing, that Larson was never able to fully get comfortable there and maybe not play to his full potential. I don't think Ristolainen will have that, for lack of a better term, that handicap on him when he's coming in. I think it'll be a complete fresh start for him. And with less pressure, I think he'd be able to flourish. Yeah, especially playing with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. That helps.
Yeah. What about you, Jordan?
We need to see a Duncan Keith, Rasmus Ristolainen pairing in 2021, man. I guess 2022 even, because I want to see how poorly all the metrics and public models rate that pairing as the season progresses. But I don't know. It's an interesting fit there. I mean, I already find it quite fascinating that they're going to be re-signing Tyson Barrie by all accounts. I don't know if you really want to right side of Barrie, Ristolainen, and whoever else you're putting there, because that's definitely very weak. If he gets any power play time of Connor McDavid at all, he's going to be putting up a lot of points. And
totally,
he's done that in the past. He's been a consistent 40-point defender usually, as this season was the outlier. I think overall, even though I think there's better fits with, like, for say the New Jersey Devils, Winnipeg Jets, I think those would be better options for him. But if he just leaves Buffalo, it's going to look a lot better for him. You're going to see a completely different player, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a lot like when Ryan O'Reilly left. I think you're going to see a completely different Rasmus Ristolainen somewhere else.
I think that Twitter would burn in that scenario. You said Duncan Keith and Rasmus Ristolainen, but I think that, just to add on to, I just thought of something to add on to what I said earlier. If you're flying under the radar, I think that you'll be playing a lot better just right off the hop. Like, you'll noticeably, like, Colin Blackwell came in. He was completely under the radar over for the Rangers. He was taxi squad to start the season. He had a career year. Yanni Gourde is not the first guy you think of on that Tampa Bay Lightning team. And here he is now projected to be a top 6 center on the Seattle Kraken. And I think that, again, you take that pressure off. You just let guys play with little to no expectations because the big guns are going to have that. Like Duncan Keith's going to have such more of a microscope on him than Ristolainen would have with Edmonton. A lot more of the microscope on him. So I think that'll help him a lot with that if he ends up there.
Yeah. So let's just say if Risto did go to Edmonton, here's a question, and it might be easy to answer considering how things have gone recently from Ken Holland and the Oilers. Does Edmonton overpay for Risto? The apparent asking price is a first-round pick and a prospect. I've also heard an NHL-ready player should be part of that deal, is what Kevin Adams is asking. Mikko Koskinen has been rumored to come back as the likely potential return to offset some salary for the Oilers. Jordan, does Edmonton overpay for Risto?
It definitely appears like that, just considering what they did with Duncan Keith, not retaining any of his salary. I don't know if they can really. That's why Koskinen's rumored, right? They can't just take on Ristolanen's salary and do that because they would be over the cap. So they're going to have to figure out a way to make that work if they really want him. Koskinen kind of makes sense there. I guess you would be running a Koskinen Allmark pairing. The thing about Costco is I think he actually can do better in a change of scenery as well. He's shown at least in glimpses that he can be an NHL goaltender. Even 2 seasons ago, he was actually pretty good there for the Oilers. And then I just don't know. I'm curious to see what happens here. I think it's more likely going to be a 2nd round pick, not a 1st. And maybe you can still get a decent prospect out of that team. I wonder if Tyler Benson's available. I could see him being a guy they look to acquire maybe as a 3rd or 4th liner for next season. But if you get any type of value like that for Risto after what he's provided for the team the past few years, I'm going to be very happy.
Yeah. Sean?
I think they're going to because they need to, in the sense that this team, I know, and I'm all for a team game. Like hockey, I don't care how good McDavid and Draisaitl are, you can't win on just 2 guys. But they need to at least make it past the 1st round again. They need something. Like at this point, I don't know what else they.
We appear to have lost Sean. Oh, there
it's
he is.
Awful that your players aren't.
Well, until we wait for Sean to come back. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, it's cutting in and out.
We're playing the guessing
They're
game.
gonna do it, I think.
Yeah.
Oh man, how bad was it?
It's a little bit bad, but we were able to make it work.
I think that they feel they need to, whether or not I think it's right. I think that they feel that they need to because they have to win now. They have to show. Let me even be a bit more generous. They have to show progression from where they've been. Connor McDavid can't be the only one. He can't. I don't think he's going to turn around and put up 200 points in 82 games next year. As good as he is, and that might be what it takes, but I don't think it's going to happen. So they need something. They need to show some sort of progression from someone other than him, Draisaitl, even Nugent Hopkins, who just got a nice deal, who's been a very consistent player for them. And it's more of a need than a want. And whether or not I agree with it, I think if they're going for him, they're gonna overpay for him.
Definitely agree with that. And we're talking about potential moves. We have an update on the Jack Eichel rumors. Elliot Friedman went on the instigators, and he believes that Anaheim has circled back on Eichel. So at this point, it's quite clear Minnesota and the Anaheim Ducks, these 2 teams are the front runners to land him. I have an interesting statistic to bring up here. This is coming from Brian Balder on Twitter. Trevor Zegras and Cole Caulfield have shown the most growth in star potential of anybody drafted in 2019. They hold the 2nd and 3rd highest star probability from the class. Jack Hughes is 1st. Now, this is just like an NHL prospect equivalency model. You can't. These models, I guess, we're still kind of in the early stages of development with those. We don't know exactly how great those are. They have a decent track record. But Trevor Zegras, man, he appears to be the best prospect available in an Eichel trade, and I'm including the likes of Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi, and that I think Zegras is just probably a step ahead of those guys. Unless maybe you can somehow convince New York to give Lafreniere. I don't really think that's happening at this point by the looks of it. No. Which team entices you the most as a trade partner out of those 2, Anaheim or Minnesota? Let's start with you there, Brandon.
I'm going with, I was always an Anaheim stalwart saying that I wanted Zegras in a third overall pick, but I don't know if we're going to get that. And you know what? I've actually turned the corner, and a lot of it is due to you enlightening me about Matt Boldy and Marco Rossi, Jordan. I have come around on those players, and I'm going to say Minnesota, in addition to the condition that I think they need to snag rookie goalie Capo Kakinen from the Wild as well. And I think if you send Jack there before Minnesota gets handcuffed with the Parise and Suter buyout money, I think that could work for both teams. And if you get, one of Boldy or Rossi, a couple first round picks, and Capo Kakinen, I think I'm going to go with Minnesota as my dream dance partner here, but I'm not really sure what's going to happen.
Well, I'm shocked that Kakinen wasn't selected. So I wonder if there's a trade lined up or if they were just really confident he wasn't going to get picked there by Seattle. I'm curious, Sean, what do you think about all the Eichel trade in general? Who do you think is the best fit there for Eichel?
Well, bias would have to go with the New York Rangers, as I grew up a Rangers fan, but I don't know if I'm willing to part way with what they'd have to. Now, when I'm thinking of this question, I have to think, as a GM for either Anaheim or Minnesota, do I really believe that within the next year or two, with adding Jack Eichel, we could make a run for the Cup? And for me, that's going to determine how much we're willing to entice Buffalo to make it. And I think because of that, Minnesota is the most likely trade partner, because they came so close to moving on. That was against Colorado.
Yes.
Correct. Against Colorado this past postseason. And I think that they have a lot of, especially if they can re-sign Kaprizov, I think this is a team to watch out for. They're not going to get much attention aside from Kirill Kaprizov making insane highlight plays, assuming he resigns. But I think that they're the team most likely because they know that they're closer. So they're going to make that push. It's kind of like, I lost where that analogy was going. But I definitely think, especially this year, they have 2 first-round picks. You can give up the better one at the very least, and it's not like you're it's not like you give up 2 first-round picks. You're out the first round for 2 years. They'll at least have one this year, even if they want to wait till 2023 to give up that one. If they think they're going to make that run with him, then who cares about a late round first-round draft pick if you're going to make a serious contention for the Cup? And I think it's going to be Minnesota.
What we have to remember here, guys, is Minnesota really has a 1-year run here to win the Stanley Cup next season. They just bought out Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. They're going to have up to $15 million of dead cap for 2 seasons there. And then they're going to have to completely deplete the rest of their roster. They're not going to be able to go for it. They have to try to win the Stanley Cup next season. And that's why I think they're going to go all in on Jack Eichel.
I think that unless they think that someone like Callan Addison or Ryan O'Rourke, Damon Hunt could step in, they need another defenseman at the very least, especially having bought out Suter. So, yes, they may be front runner for him, and you can't argue the game changer that he is and what he would bring to that team. But I think at the very least, you need another NHL caliber defenseman. I don't know if you want to make a run relying on someone who's unproven right now. Especially with, as you said, you have a 1-year window. If you want to let them wait or work them in, 7th defenseman type stuff, sure. But you need another NHL caliber defenseman who can log consistent top 6 minutes, not that in and out 7th defenseman.
Yeah, well, if they sweeten the deal a little bit, we'll throw in Rasmus Ristolainen for him. Yeah. All right. Capping up the Sabres stuff here before we go straight into the Kraken talk. Couple of Sabres notes for the rest of this discussion. According to John Vogel, Linus Ullmark, our beloved goaltender, who I hope, I'm crossing my fingers he stays. Ullmark's agent says that communication is continuing, and we'll see where that takes us in the upcoming weeks. In addition to that, regular season schedule was released today for all the teams in the NHL. The Sabres open up play against the Montreal Canadiens, who just made a run to the Cup final. We'll see if they're that good again next season. October 14th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo to begin the season. So I am excited for that. And I saw that your Kraken are going to be playing, the Vegas Golden Knights for their home, not home opener, but season opener.
I like that.
Yeah.
They're playing Tampa for their first game, I saw, correct?
Seattle? I think they're playing Vegas for their first
No,
game.
I think their first game is away though. Their home opener is until October
Yeah,
23.
but the home opener is against the Canucks, I believe.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but
I'll be
that should
honest.
be exciting.
He doesn't even know.
Yeah, I was at work, and it's kind of hard to get on my phone at work.
Oh,
I'm not a lot of sitting down time, so I'm like trying to catch up on my 30-minute lunch break of everything. I saw the Pitlick trade, but other than that, I was kind of it's difficult, kind of out of the loop, but you know.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that and more. I don't blame you there, but let's reset the show here. You're watching Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube. Follow and share us on Facebook and catch all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed, which is at Sabres Scoop THW. Also, another THW show called Chicks and Sticks just made a Twitter account at THW Chick Sticks. Make sure to go follow them. We also tweeted that out. Jordan, do you want to get into the Kraken stuff?
Alrighty, we got to recap this entire expansion draft. First question I got to ask you, Sean, is which picks intrigued you the most? You know, just to recap everybody. Some interesting selections in my eyes were Vince Dunn over Vladimir Tarasenko. They actively chose Brandon Tanev, who is a decent bottom six winger there, but he has a lot of term left, 4 years left. Guys like Mark Giordano from the Calgary Flames, potentially the first captain. Jordan Eberle, who was somehow left exposed over Matt Martin. I can't believe that. I'm sure we're going to get into that. Other names, we talked about Adam Larson. Maybe we'll get more into that. He was surprising. I didn't expect that to happen. Jamie Alexiak as well, signing that huge deal and coming over from the Dallas Stars. And then players like Yanni Gord, Jonas Donskoy. Which picks intrigued you the most, Sean?
Well, I want to start with what you said about Matt Martin being protected, and I think that's Lou Lamoriello really banking that he re-signs Casey Cizikas, and they want to keep that identity line together especially because I'm pretty sure it was Cal Clutterbuck was protected as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
which I would have protected Martin over Clutterbuck personally. So I think that was intriguing as well, and he wants to keep them together. And I thought it was going to be Bailey personally. Eberle's a solid pick. If he can return to goal scoring form like he was in Edmonton, you know, the style that Barry Trotz runs, as you could see with Barzal not being, you know, an 85-point scorer, the style definitely hindered his scoring ability. But I definitely think that if he returns to form, then they have their goal scorer. A lot of people say they're weak on goal scorers with this expansion draft. That's one right off the bat. I had mixed feelings with Jamie Alexiak just because of the term they gave him. He plays a heavy game, blocking shots, throwing the body, and it's a matter of how long can his body hold up over that time. I don't like to think personally, as maybe I'm a dreamer with this, but I don't like to think, oh, he's signed for 6, 7, 8 years. He's going to be bought out year 4. But with the way he plays, already 28 years old, I'm not too sure. It's not like he's flying around, dodging bodies. He's getting in the gritty areas. He's throwing it around, and that putting those miles on, I'm not too sure how long he's going to last there.
You know, they made sure to mention on the broadcast that Jamie Alexiak is the most heavy player in the National Hockey League. You know, Chris Fowler, new NHL broadcaster there for ESPN, mentioning that. Definitely an odd moment, but it was kind of a little bit funny. At least Jamie was able to not cry walking off the stage there. I'm just curious though about him. You know, the contract, it's 5 years at $4.6 million per. At least according to Jay Fresh Hockey's model, he's come on this podcast as well. It does rate him actually pretty highly. And I've noticed a lot of public models actually do rate him as a good defender. Mm-hmm. Now, he did play on a pairing with Miro Heiskanen. And I've saw from Dallas Stars fans is they're actually happy that Alexiak's gone because they thought he was kind of holding Miro Heiskanen back there from being the true self that he can be. What do you make of those claims there, Sean, based on what you've been seeing all over the internet?
I think it reminds me a bit of Ryan McDonough, Dan Girardi, albeit Heiskanen is definitely more of an offensive threat than McDonough. But if I recall, McDonough's best offensive years were there when he could take chances offensively and Dan Girardi was the anchor. I don't necessarily see him being an anchor as him being Alexiak being an anchor as holding back Heiskanen. I think that it's just because, you know, Dallas got off to a tough start this year, and based on what he showed in that run to the Stanley Cup, expectations were higher than maybe they should have been, and he didn't live up to them. But I don't think Alexiak held him back. If anything, you could take more chances having a statistically and eye test wise dependable defender in Alexiak having his back there.
Definitely. And, you know, talking about some of those other players, Carey Price not selected by the Montreal Canadiens, you know, kind of sad to see. That would have been fun. Another interesting player in Jonathan Drouin, not selected. They decided to reunite the Fleury brothers. Hayden coming over from Anaheim, Kale coming over from Montreal. How disappointed were you that Price wasn't selected?
Not. I was disappointed in the sense that you want that guy who's going to be your face, and we'll get to that later when we talk about Mark Giordano. But I was looking more at Jonathan Drouin personally. I think that him on the first line would have been solid. There was another player who I thought could be playing with him, Max Domi, another non-selection, but I just don't want to take that salary of Carey Price. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, he maybe if he was a bit younger, but I do not want to take that salary. It's one thing to be willing to spend to the cap, but there's another thing. You could get 2 or 3 players to really solidify your lineup, a scoring winger, top 6 center, with that money that you're saving, not giving it, not having Carey Price. And I love the goalies they took. I thought there was some youth. There was a lot of potential there. And if you have a solid defense, and as we said earlier, they definitely built from the back end, that'll help younger goalies, even if they start to struggle, rather than having lesser experience, a weaker back end.
Definitely.
It's almost like a safety net.
Sorry. Look at the Florida Panthers. They currently have Spencer Knight coming up, and Sergei Bobrovsky, sadly, is making $10 million per season forever, basically forever. So that's basically what you would have there with Carey Price and potentially a goalie. Like, you want to see what Chris Streaker's, they're clearly valuing him potentially as a starting goaltender. And they got a guy like Vanacek, from Washington, who does have potential as well. So I'd take the bet on some of the younger guys, let them play. And we know Ron Francis really values that cap space. He's made that very clear in every press conference, every statement he's made. It's quite interesting there. And I'm just curious, what do you think of, we talked a little bit about Yanni Gourde, so I don't know if you can add a little bit about that. What do you think of Jonas Donskoy? Because that's a player who I think will take a step with Seattle.
I honestly don't know too much about Jonas Donskoy, except that I think it was Marshawn Lynch butchered his name. Who was it?
It was Calle Jarnkrok, wasn't it? Calle Jarnkrok?
No, that was the Calle Jarnkrok one. I forget who it was. I just remember hearing that, and I was like, he needs help with that one. But I think that he's good. Yeah, as you said, he's going to get a bit more of a role here, a bit more of a chance. But I still think he's kind of that bottom 9 player. Like, you could throw him up on a second line. He's not. I don't think he's first line. I think that he definitely would be consistent third, fill in second line winger. I think that, again, if he could just come in, put up a decent defensively, put up some points, I think he'll be fine. I think he's a piece that they could be willing to move to.
Oh, yeah. And now we got to kind of get into this. Which picks surprised you the most? There's a few names on here. I'm sure we're going to get right into this. I'm just going to recap some of the ones that were on my mind. Carson Tornwiski, from Philadelphia, over the likes of JVR and Voracek. Very interesting there. Gavin Bayreuther from Columbus over players like Kevin Stunland, Max Domi. Very shocked at that one. Also, Dean Kukin was available there. Morgan Geeky, Carolina, over Jake Bean, and Dennis Cholowitzki over Troy Stetcher in Detroit. Which one of those, or even other ones, surprised you the most?
I think the one that surprised me the most was Twarinsky. Excuse me if I'm butchering that. And it's not because of Voracek or JVR. And I think that there might have been a deal in place to keep him in Philadelphia for the next, 24 hours. I really, really saw Shane Gostisbehere going to Seattle. He had his most prolific offensive seasons under Dave Haxtell, 17 goals and 46 points one year. He had a bit of an off second year, but then he came back with 13 goals and 65 points. I think that could have rejuvenated his career. Granted, if he's playing with OEL in Arizona, that could help a lot. But I really, really thought that he was going to be in Seattle. He was going to relink with Dave Haxtell, and he was going to be I didn't think that they were going to take Giordano necessarily. I think that he was going to be the guy. He was going to be the guy on the back end in Seattle. That I was shocked.
Yeah, I'm shocked they didn't take any of those 3 players. Like, I get you don't want to necessarily help Philly out, but there were some good players there. Like, you want to have some decent players playing in your lineup, right? I think you should have taken at least one of those. So I'm curious what France's plan is in that regard. Max Domi, I mean, it sounded like coming into it too that he wasn't going to be selected. That would have been an interesting one just because, he had a 72-point season, in Montreal just 2 years ago. Playing in an environment like that for an expansion team, I have to wonder if he would have been the player that potentially could have propelled them. I guess they didn't believe so. They have reasonings for that. So a lot of surprises there. Were there any others you wanted to highlight, Sean?
I just want to touch upon what you said about Domi real quick. He reminds me a bit of Alex Galchenyuk in the sense that they just need to find the right fit. They've shown that they can play. Galchenyuk had a 56-point season with Montreal. I just think that they need to find that fit, and it looked like he was finding it with Toronto. Galchenyuk, I haven't really seen much out of Domi since that 1 year with the Canadiens, but I thought that a complete fresh start for Domi would have been good for him. I don't necessarily know how well he's going to do. It might be, as far as I know, Tortorella is completely done in Columbus, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe a change of coach is going to help him, but I really thought, again, same concept as Goss Bear, fresh start, new team. Difference is he had a similar coach, the same coach. I think that Domi, I was really surprised. I had him being top line center there. I had him and Drouin playing together.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm definitely scratching my head about some of the players that weren't taken. But like I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff coming up where Francis can be very creative and make a lot of moves. So we'll see what happens. Speaking of, sort of an open-ended question here. What do you make of Seattle not making any side deals before the expansion draft yesterday? That was pretty unprecedented, especially considering Vegas made 10.
I think that it just shows that he's either going to be, I think he wanted the cap space. I think that that's why he drafted the way he did. I think that's why he didn't make other side deals. I think he's going to do all that after the fact. He just wanted to get through the expansion draft, not in a disrespectful way, but I think that the work was going to be done after the draft. He needed that team in order to start the real work right now. I think we're going to see some interesting moves. I think we're going to see some interesting free agent signings. I don't think that Giordano is going anywhere because you're not going to put him on your Twitter and Instagram, have him in person if you're going to ship him out. And if you did, that would not, I think that'd be pretty classless, not to be harsh, but to prop him up. Like, he's one of the guys, one of the faces that you're putting on your franchise right from the get-go, and you're going to ship him out. I don't think so.
Yeah, especially to acquire Ryan Strome. Like, I get Ryan Strome's a decent player and all, but I don't think you need to trade Mark Giordano for him, especially if he's clearly like captain material.
That, and I don't entirely think the Rangers need another defenseman. I think that they're in a window to push for a playoff spot, depending on how some of the other teams in the division do. I don't necessarily think that they should be taking away roster spots from these young kids who they're going to have to figure it out sooner or later with. You're going to have to see who can play and who can't, and who's worth trading down the line to get those extra one or two pieces to make a push for the cup. Not even the push for the playoffs, a push for the cup. I think they're a fringe playoff team, and your goal is always to strive to win the Stanley Cup. That's always the goal. But expectation wise, I think it's a push for the playoffs, have a strong first round and go from there. And I think that you got to figure it out sooner or later with some of these kids. Like, I know a lot of Rangers fans and members of the Rangers community are really like at their wits' end with Libor Hayek, but you got other guys coming up. I just don't. He would be great leader, great experience. Back when Pat Maroon was a free agent, I thought that the Rangers should have gone for him with that winning experience, because there's definitely a difference between just experience and winning experience, and that's what Barclay Goodrow brings them. But I just, and that's no disrespect to Gio. I think I love what he brings. I love the way he plays. He can put up points, but he can put up points, but he plays a heavy game. I just don't think it's the right move. I don't necessarily agree with naming a captain right off the hop just to have a captain. Like, you saw how long it took Vegas. Granted, if you walk into the locker room 2 days before the end of the training camp and you can see this is the guy, go for it. But I think it should be picked from within, not just given. Again, no disrespect to Gio, but he'll wear an A at the very least. He's an alternate captain. He's going to be one of the voices in the locker room, and he's not going anywhere.
Well, talking about potential player movement here in Seattle, they did trade Tyler Pitlick to Calgary for a 2022 fourth round pick. Not that we need to indulge too much into that, but it poses an interesting question. Who else do you expect to be moved over the coming days off the Kraken? Who are some guys that you think were selected just to immediately get shipped out the door? If you can name any.
That's tough. I think that because of the depth of that back end, it's going to be one of those guys.
Yeah,
that's tough to say because I'm really not sure off the hop, if I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Well, I honestly thought they were going to move more guys, right? Like, see, Vegas did so many of those trades, and I know that they're kind of preparing to have an AHL team, so that's why maybe a guy like Gavin Bayreuther was selected. I don't think he's actually going to play in the NHL, and maybe you give Will Borgen some more AHL time, but I don't know. I thought they were going to be able to acquire like second, third round picks. They haven't been able to do that yet. So it looks like they're just going to have 8 draft picks for your first round. First time ever doing this isn't bad, but Vegas literally dominated having all of those picks and being able to make all the trades they did. Seattle just doesn't have that same luxury by the looks of it.
I think that they're banking on free agency.
Oh yeah.
I really think so. I think that, but at the same time, I think it has to go hand in hand. Like if you're going to land a big name free agent, someone's got to move, unless you think that you can put them in the AHL. But how many guys are going to want to do that, without demanding for a trade? I think that this team is going to have a heavy influence of free agency. Granted, for all we know, there could be a blockbuster in the works as we speak, especially they're on Pacific Coast time. I'm on East Coast time, so they got a couple hours on me. But it's definitely a little. It's interesting. It's hard to tell because it's not like they have a big name aside from Giordano, who I'm already saying is going to stay. They don't have that guy that's like, this is our guy that we're going to flip.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, just to cap off everything here, one simple question. I don't know if you want to go with letter grades here or just your general consensus, whatever. Overall, how would you grade Seattle's expansion draft? Just the entire roster, the entire makeup. How do you think Ron Francis and company did?
I'd say a cautious B. And I think that's because there's a lot left unseen, as we kind of just discussed. There seems like how there's no trades that were made. Not a lot of trades that were made aside from Tyler Pitlick for a fourth. I think that there's just a lot more unseen. In drafting to have as much cap space as they did, that gets a lot of points. You want to have that. He said he's willing to spend to the cap. He can spend to the cap, but giving yourself that flexibility, that latitude to be able to do that in the coming weeks when free agency kicks off. I think that was a very smart move. Whether it's the mock draft, whether it's playing NHL 21, a lot of times you'll see a lot of these big name guys. You want to put up a good team. You want to start playing. You want to win now. You can do that. He's got guys like Yanni Gourde, bigger ticket, but not as big as it could be. He's not got that $10 million salary. Jordan Eberle as well, 5.5 per. But I think that free agency is really going to be key for this team. I'm not too sure there's going to be any, sign-in trades. Rather, there would be more of these expansion drafts and trades. It just, it's not going to be Adam Larson. Again, not going to sign and trade, not Alexiak. But who on that back end are you really looking to move right now? It's all top 6 / depth players aside from, Dunn's going to be a top 4. I think Lozon could play top 4. Then you got Giordano, Alexiak, Larson. So for all intents and purposes, Giordano, Alexiak, Larson, Dunn in your top 4. Just the combinations could change. Then you got a bunch of guys for those 2 open spots. How many of those guys are really going to be okay playing in the AHL? Especially you got them, Dunn's got to get signed, but Borgen, like we talked about, Cholowski, they're RFAs. They got to get signed. Definitely. So I think that's the key factor right there.
And we're just going to quickly touch upon this before we wrap up the show. The Detroit Red Wings made the trade of the offseason today. I am calling it the trade of the offseason because I can't believe this actually went through. Acquiring goaltender Alex Nedelkovic from the Carolina Hurricanes for Jonathan Bernier, his rights, by the way, because he is going to be heading into unrestricted free agency, and a 2021 third-round pick. Detroit immediately re-signed Nedelkovic to a 2-year contract with an average annual value of $3 million per season. What do we make of this deal? Because Yzerman himself even said to the media, when asked why the Canes would even trade the Calder nominee, you're going to have to ask them why they were comfortable doing that. He actually said that, but I listened to it too. It was beautiful. I got to ask, so let's start with you, Sean. What's going on here? Why do you think Carolina did this? Was it just purely financial reasons?
I'll be honest, the last half of that I missed. My computer completely froze. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
But, sorry, continue.
Did you get the question? Was what do you make of the trade between Detroit acquiring Nedelkovic? What do you make of that?
You said that the cap hit was the contract was 2 years, $3 million per.
Yes.
I'm not sure why Carolina wouldn't give him that. It's not that. Okay, maybe you think that he's still not fully proven. $3 million could be a lot, but it's a 2-year deal. That's a 2 years and you're done. And he's been a solid goalie. He was up for the Calder. 2 years and you're done, or move him at the deadline that second year. I think that's Steve Yzerman speeding. He's got his goalie. This is a prove it deal. If he proves it, he's got his goalie. And I think that Carolina, I'm a little confused with that, honestly. I saw that on the wire on my lunch break, and I was like, why would you do that? But
yeah. Well,
the
Carolina,
draft pick could come in handy.
Yeah, it could turn into their next stud goalie. Who knows? But Carolina's got Bernier and Reimer now, so some 2014 Leafs vibes. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff down there. So we'll see. Apparently the asking price that Nedelkovic wanted from the Hurricanes was only $3.5 million. I don't know why they couldn't have.
And they were only offering him $1.5 million, which is crazy. I don't understand.
Crazy.
They're crazy.
Can I ask the two of you, how do we feel about Carolina as a team? Do we still feel like they have any magic left from that run they went on, or do we think that, not that they're kind of looking at a retool by trading Nedelkovic, but what I just can't. A second round pick could be valuable. Yes, I just can't understand that. And again, it'd be different if he wanted a good amount over 4 or 5 years at this point, but a year, 2 years, I'm just scratching my head.
They need a goalie. That's all. That's my opinion.
I would say this: the magic is wearing off with that team. They're kind of heading towards the San Jose Sharks, St. Louis Blues territory from the 2010s, right? They can't get over that hump. Mm-hmm. And until they do, those are the teams they're going to be compared to. So at some point, they're going to have to figure it out. Losing Dougie Hamilton is going to be a major loss for them, an absolute major loss. Even though he is heading into his 30s, his best years are definitely behind him at this point. They're going to have to figure it out there because, this is a team everybody thought was going to be winning the Stanley Cup very soon. They're not on track to do it with this trade today.
Jake Bean's really got to step up. Do you think they make the playoffs next year?
Definitely. Yeah, they should be a playoff team.
Yeah, especially because I don't see the 4 and 5 teams in the Atlantic being better than the 4 and 5 teams in the Metro. So, yeah. Anyway,
good point.
That'll about do it. We thank you for joining us. This has been Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube, follow and share us on Facebook, and follow the show on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. And thank you so much again to Sean. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at RAGGIO9124. Again, we'll share that handle with you guys. Catch his Kraken takes as the draft and free agency near. Once again, make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss the latest and the weirdest hockey news every day. And don't miss out on all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com. As always, thank you again for Jordan and Sean. This is Brandon, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.